You're starting to put real manifestation of who and when and how long and what's it going to cost. And or in terms of time and effort. It might not necessarily be monetary effort, but there will be an equivalent opportunity cost of spending your time doing one thing versus another. In the room, 52 Jokers Wild. Our universe, for us to build it, we have to find the parts, we have to find the people, we have to populate it, we have to have the materials, we have to have the resources. We know what it looks like on the postcard, but we can only take that picture after we've built it. And that's where we keep on going. You want to be insane in the membrane to start this journey, because most people want to step into the postcard. They want you to have solved all the problems and de-risked it. They want to just turn up on the seat and go on the journey. They don't want to build the bus on the way. So it's like, that wasn't an answer to your question, George. Who sang the song? And I might remember who it was.
Cypress Hill, apparently. And
right.
There's actually Insane in the Brain, which apparently seems to be on the Black Sunday album. But there is Insane in the Membrane. Whether that's the same album or not, I'm not too sure.
And I don't know if I ever knew Cypress Hill. I may have heard him on the radio. No, it won't even be that. All I can remember are those couple of lyrics, and I can feel them repeating them in my head, and it's Insane in the Membrane. And that's all it needs to be. Those three, Insane in the 4 words possibly, is all that matters, because that is what's making the difference.
Well, this is quite interesting, because apparently the intro is... who you trying to get crazy with else? Don't you know I'm loco? And we were talking about earlier on keeping on going, keeping on locomoting and driving forward. Now, the other thing is it says, to the one on the flamboyant tip, I just tossed that ham in the frying pan. Like spam, get done when I can and slam. Dawn, I feel like the son of Sam. Ah, there you go, son of Sam. Don't make me wreck. I won't say that word. Hectic. Next, get the chair. Going like General Electric. Loco. There you go.
Right. Well, there's the locomotion. There's a train. There's General Electric. Garvin Electricity was my nickname. So when I was growing up, because I was always doing the shaking the hands. They thought I was like, electric. But again, if I think back on that, what you were saying was, I was always passionate. I was always excited about nothing and everything. Therefore, people would give you a wide berth because they just didn't understand what the hell that was. You were on a spectrum of your own making. But it's also that magnetism. You're going, anyone that, whatever your your poles are, you're going, if you repel the person, whoever that person is, they didn't get it. They can't get it. It's not in them. They're not going to change who they are to align with you. They will never get it. But those that you attract are the ones you are meant to attract. And it makes sense because they get it. They're attracted to you. But you have to be out there, and we're looking for them. That's our new journey right now. We want our new panels. We're creating jobs, but it's not for anybody and everybody. It's not money to pay for something on time. That's just, the reward. What we want to attract are those that get it. We want to attract that creativity. We want to attract those that want to give to the next generation. We want to attract those that want to give of their last, to have that one last chance dance and the last chance saloon to make a difference and create that baby universe of we don't know we're going to build that new song that's going to be Insane in the Membrane from now till doomsday, and get that little viral something, that little worm, whatever you want to, the viral worm. That's what we want to do. We're going on the journey of that. If we can get that pulse generating in that little TARDIS of baby universe creator, and the crew that's in there, the ones that want to go, that's the strange thing. If you were given the chance by your man Elon Musk to go, we're going to planet X, Y, and Z, and we're going to populate it. It's a one-way journey. It's 200 years. Who's putting their hands up? The crew have to go. They're there. I want to be the captain of this ship. They're there. They're signed up. Scotty and the crew are there. They're the engineers and the doctors. But who's going to sign up to be the passengers? Because they're going to become the next crew, and they're going to become the populators of the next planet, and they got to take on all these roles and generate the next population. So but you're safe here at Safe Haven. Do you suddenly leave the planet and go, I need to leave the planet. I need to be on that ship. I need to be, going on this long journey because that's what I'm meant to be doing, as opposed to there's a million things you can do on this planet. So we're strangely enough, there's going to be people attracted to that, to go on these strange journeys in these weird sort of ships that aren't safe, but they're going on a journey no one else is going on.
I think what is important is that those students that you mentioned before, that I'm looking at a student type. I'm also looking at people who have actually found that they've gone down one track in their life, and they've kind of boxed themselves into that particular area, but they don't realize that their skill sets, if they were slightly migrated into a different channel, could actually give them another lifeline into that industry that they've actually gone into. And I think that's the opportunity as well, is you're actually trying to learn, we're trying to get a language worked out that we can that allows those people in different areas of their life, in different stages of their career, to be able to access the language of the people that want them to work with them. And it's not about sort of having these aspirations to produce your own. If it is, it's something you do later on in life.
I don't think we need to worry about that. We're not trying to explain that to everybody.
No,
See, this is the thing. It's not. It's just not a product list. I think
that's what's. Yeah, but I think that's what's important to a lot of youngsters. They're being encouraged to think of themselves as writers, directors, and producers straight out of college. Those people should be thinking themselves of which track do I go in to build up my career, because it's a life. You spend 3 years in college or university. You're going to spend the next 40 years working. So you've got to get that working mind. It's not about being a student. It's not about playing around. It's not about learning, although you are going to learn throughout the whole of your career. It's about making yourself adapt to yourself. Now, I've got your title up here as Mr. Disruptor. What most people have to do is disrupt the idea that they think they are, and stop putting the parameters on themselves, but to try and work out where the opportunities are and how they can adapt to that new opportunity, and how can they embrace the language of that new opportunity so that they can actually move forward and keep on moving forward.
No, you're actually
being viable time and time again.
That's interesting now, because our preamble again was talking about what was all last year about. The 52 episodes or 55 episodes. And what it was about was finding our language. Also finding our language for who we are. We're not everything to everybody. We keep on getting distracted by others by saying, we can do that. We can have an offering under that heading. Oh, we can do that, me too. But then we're realizing we're gravitating to others and trying to compete with them in their space where they're the experts. We're going, that's their language, their universities, they have these courses, they're doing it for 100 years, and they'll have to morph going forward and maybe do it slightly different going forward with the new environments, but they are already established with their brands of years of doing it, and they're going to grow and change themselves and maybe find a new language. They're trying to find our language, because we went off and searched and said, actually, the language that the industry wants education to have, in our case, was more of a language of mentee or intern or apprentice, as opposed to student and classroom student. They don't want students. The industry does not want students. Now, admittedly, we are going to be students all of our lives. We should remain a student at heart and always continuously seek to grow. So therefore, we're students of life, and we're students of business, and we'll always be a student with different levels of qualification. That's grand. Us as a business, the student we're not going to use the language student anymore. It's customer. These individuals are our customers. What we are selling or delivering to them in terms of solving problems and pain points is. And what we have adapted from the language is what these customers of ours will want is the best go-to training that money can buy, of a higher quality than the competition, delivered faster and more effective, that the industry, being their potential employer of the future, if they don't go self-employed, will find very, very attractive. will see them as having the testimonial of a portfolio of the right type of experience, not sitting in a class, not doing a case study that had no meaning, asked for by nobody, and doesn't have an end audience consuming necessarily that's willing to pay for it. This journey is about skills development, be it student or be CPD, if you're already a student of life and already have a job and you want to continually learn. So in both cases, you're a student if you're being educated. But the delivery mechanism that we're concentrating on now is out of classroom into practical go work environment. Be intern, be the apprentice, be in the real life environment, and be learning every single minute of the day from your surroundings and the individuals and your mentors and your peers and your team and your customers, if there's someone else there too. It's to be in this constant state of learning and immersion. So the language becomes, we intend to deliver fully immersed learning experiences in a go-do environment of a quality and standard that is equal, if not better, than other offerings. So student, we're not talking to students. You know who you are. You're our customer. You're our investor. We want to invest in you. We want to deliver to you. We want to solve your pains. We want to give you the best chance to be the best you as fast as possible, to get that earning for yourself and learn and get those roles and those positions that you're interested in. And therefore, this is now the language going forward. That's all the language is. No student, no little task, no activity, because it doesn't mean anything to any one individual. It's a language of, do you want to get the best in class? Do you want to be the innovator instead of the follower? Do you want to be the leader? Do you want to be the first to go do? Do you want to be immersed in it? Do you want to be surrounded by it? Do you want to be in the middle with your peers? And if so, let's go do. But don't worry, the language of student, we're all students and always will be. We no longer need to use it.
What's really great about that is that I was thinking through a number of the processes that I would have got involved with, and how do you pick those skills up, and having the opportunity to ask questions in the industry as it is at the moment. It's working at such a rate that lots of heads of departments are being moved up. They're just getting their own feet under the table to try and work out what their role is and how to define their role within the job that they're currently doing, that when they suddenly find that they have somebody to mentor, they don't have time to mentor. They just need someone that knows their job, that can help back them up and get their job done more efficiently. What our model is going to do is going to provide the opportunity where it's still a real live production, but the pace has been slowed down sufficiently that you can ask the questions that are going on in your head. You don't need to feel bad about asking those questions, but you'll also be observing what other people are doing, and you'll be able to imitate and mimic and get a chance to practice, because you'll get to rotate on each of those roles and be helped through that process by the mentor that we're having, who comes from industry, talking the right kind of language that you need to know, so that when you do go out there on your first job, you understand what's being asked of you, and you can work efficiently and fast to keep pace of what's going on all around you. And I think that's interesting. We were talking to someone in industry that's worked in as a assistant director, as a location manager, and one of the things that he was saying is that the industry is working at like 16-hour days, and if you watch any kind of DVDs from the past with the supporting documentaries, you'll find that yes, for the last 20 odd years, that's the kind of rate of time that you're actually having to put into it. You're not necessarily working constantly for 16 hours. I think that's something that's quite interesting. You are in the editing suite quite often, but when you're actually on location, you're sitting around waiting for another activity to be put in place so that you can now follow on and do your part. And then as soon as that's done, you have to sit back and rest, which is why a lot of the actors and the talent are given their own little caravans to sit in when they're not needed. So they've got somewhere to rest, get them out the way so that they're not, interrupting what's going on. But also it's the etiquette that goes on set that becomes so important, because if you're not aware of it and you're interrupting through asking your questions at that stage, it can actually slow that process down and people can get irritated. But we're actually reversing that slightly so that we can give you the opportunity to come in, ask those questions, which are relevant questions, and see how that helps develop the production that you're actually working on, which is a live production. That's our intention. It's a live production. It's not just something that's a paper exercise just to do something. You'll get a chance to work on the material that you're edited. Now, I know I've done a number of courses in the past at a professional level where we got to shoot 35mm film. And it was great. We were using a 35mm camera. We were shooting scenes and it was brilliant. And we said, right, when's the stuff going to be processed and when can we get to edit it? And it never did. And we kind of went, well, that was a waste. The point of actually shooting that material was that you need to be able to see the end result so you can edit together and see how it works as a story.
9 out of 10 could end up being failures based on lack of planning, lack of stakeholder engagement, not enough resources in place, so they could deliver 80% of something and turns out it's 100% useless because it doesn't get you to the end game that you can move from legacy to new. You've got to totally leave the past behind and go into the new system. And if you underestimate or under-resource, then that money is gone on consultants. You're halfway between one place and another. You're in neither. You're off. You've got to plan it right. And like we were even talking earlier on going, okay, we've got the language of it. We have the documentation of the process. This language of process and documentation, which is what it's trying to do is collect evidence of successful journeys that you're delivering on your project plan, that you're delivering on these activities, that these resources turned up and did what they were asked to time, to budget, and that you weren't under-resourced and that value was lost as a result. So we're all on this critical path in our lifetime of this is 2021. We're measuring ourselves in measures of a year, being the next set of New Year's resolutions is in the next new year. What are our big asks and big goals for this year? And that's where in all these like Tony Robbins and the world go, you got 5 big asks, and one that could be one under health, one under wealth, one under business, but they're going to break down into mini ones. They're going to go to achieve that, lose 3 stone. What are you doing? When are you doing it? How often? With who? What exercises? Have you a mentor? Are you on your own? Have you got the equipment? It breaks down into there's 365 days. It's a many hours a day. Are you getting up an hour earlier? Are you going to bed an hour earlier? It's all this. We know what the end result looks like, but we don't, or we're not building out the plan to go, that's the effort. And that's what you're actually committing to when you say that sentence, I want to be 2 stone lighter. That's 5,000 press-ups, 600 miles of running within a year. What is it that achieves that? And we're saying we're in this new business. We're going to continue doing our show. We're going to do 50 episodes this year, not 100, but because we want to do it. We might have 30 guests or 20 guests. We don't know when and where just in the moment, but as soon as we start locking it in, we go, if we want one a month, then we have to do it by X, Y, and Z. Who are they? Where are they? Will they give us our time? You're starting to put real manifestation of who and when and how long and what's it going to cost. And or in terms of time and effort, it might not necessarily be monetary effort, but there will be an equivalent opportunity cost of spending your time doing one thing versus another. So we're very excited about making our journey real. And George said it, we want to not get sick. We want to have time in there for family and friends. We want to be enjoying what we're doing. It can't be talking about it anymore. Now, this is talking about it, but this has its half-hour episode of we're allowed to talk about it now. But next time when we switch this off, is now what you're doing about it.
What I find fascinating about a lot of what we're talking about is there's a dialogue in it that can in itself be overwhelming. And what we've got to do is humanize what we're doing so that people can see the value in what we're talking about in their own aspirations of what they're trying to do. And it's the challenge that I think we have is, especially for me, coming from a more functional practical sort of background is trying to align to what the dialogue is that we're actually talking about when we use some of the terminologies that we've been discussing, which are more business related. And at the end of the day, it's about how is your action going to generate some kind of reward for that action in usually monetary terms, so that you can, one, pay your bills. That's what most people, that's the basics of what it is. That's the engine that we've been talking about over the last few episodes is how do you create, what is the fuel that needs to come in that will keep the pistons going, that will actually transport you forward so you can achieve your goals, that what you're actually wanting to do. And as long as they don't sort of change the fuel from petrol or diesel to electricity, and you've got to take out your engine and put something else in there that has a different type of motor that won't work on the other fuel. I think that's an important part to make sure you can do as well. So when bits and pieces do wear out, which they can do very easily, then you can actually, transfer them and take them out and put them back in and keep that engine going, I think, as long as it's a valid engine. I'm using a lot of different languages that are more attuned to motor racing and things like that, I suppose, or even just trying to keep a car going. But it is the same kind of thing. We're trying to humanize what it is that we're trying to do so we can relate to it. So it's not just some sort of abstract view of what we're trying to do. There is meaning, because there is a goal that we want to try and achieve. And once we actually get there, we know that the experience that people will be having will allow them to achieve their individual goals from lots of different perspectives, at least 16 different perspectives. Actually, no, 16 in one part of the process, but another 5 or 6 people who have other aspirations and sharing their knowledge to the people they're actually working with, and also giving them an opportunity to do things that maybe for a long, long period of time they haven't been able to do, because the way things seem to be changing, or the what they thought they were getting into this industry to do, they never managed to achieve. So it allows them to accomplish some of their goals. I think that's an important part of it. So again, we have done a lot over the last 2 years. We have created the designs for the engine that we want to produce that will do the bits and pieces that we want it to do to allow us to accomplish our goals. And our goals are basically that we actually enjoy working in the industry. Well, I do. And that's something that you're aspiring to. You've had experience, Garvin, with your son being an extra on a set of a movie, where the people around you, because you actually were able to interact with them in a language that they understood, suddenly recognize you more as a producer than an extra. Because they suddenly realized that the language that you were talking about, which was more to do with finance, actually was about how do they keep their particular engine running, because they were running out of the fuel that was going to keep it going. And if they ran out of the fuel, the production stopped. Whereas your ideas of what you'd seen could actually generate the fuel that they desperately needed to be able to keep their production actually running. And I think that's key. I know loads of productions that we've been in the past, the difficulty is they've run out of money because they hadn't planned what they were doing. They hadn't understood the basic component parts that were involved in putting a film together. They didn't know how to produce it. They didn't know how to make it. They didn't know how to production manage it properly, because they hadn't got enough experience to actually do that. And they couldn't afford to pay for the people that did know how to do that and bring them on set to help them accomplish those goals. So their budget very, very quickly ran out. But when you did have people that knew how to organize a budget, how to run the production so that all the component parts could be there in a composite way so that they could get each shot and build up the scenes that they needed to build up to tell their story, and they knew where it was going to, because that's an important part, is making sure that everything was documented so that when the editor got it, they knew how to decipher one shot from another in a certain order that they could put it together that represented the script that they'd actually been given. That becomes an important part. And quite often, I think that a lot of people have a fantasy idea of what a film is all about. Doesn't matter where they come in, whether they're youngsters going through college or they've suddenly got to retirement age and they suddenly feel that, actually, I'd like to get into the film industry now because that's something I've always wanted to do. A lot of bankers I know have got into that sort of area. And there have been other people.
And accountants.
Yeah. And there's been investors. I know my brother's working with an investor, and he got into the film industry and now moved out into another part of the industry. But he also knew how to get funding into projects so they could actually be made. And again, the reason why we're all trying to do this is because we're trying to find a way that we enjoy doing something that we're using our time for, that we feel as though gives us some kind of meaning and value that's not just money. The money side's nice to make sure the bills get paid, but that we feel as though our life has had some kind of meaning. So it actually comes down to a very fundamental human aspiration. That what it is that we want is to feel as though our life on this planet, for the very short time that we're actually here, has some kind of meaning and was worthwhile while we're actually here. And that's where the value, I think, comes from, that we're trying to work out. So it's deciphering the language that we've been given to work out how each individual sees that as value. I know that we've been watching a few little documentaries that have been looking at how poor people see it as time that they're actually giving away, whereas rich people see it's value that they're actually giving away. And their calculations are done in a different way. And it also means that if you value your time more, you'll actually be more efficient in the way you give your time away. You won't run out of that time. And I think that's something that we're trying to make sure that we do in this particular project, is make sure that we efficiently use the time that we have so we can do other things that are also important to us, which includes the family. Making sure you have time, valuable time with your family to experience life together, because you're supposed to be sharing it. We're supposed to be social beings, or animals, if you like. But that's something, I think, which is what draws me to the kind of filmmaking process, is because put in the right context and done in the right way, the actual activity of making a film, you're actually creating a little unit that works. And if those people enjoy the company of one another to actually do this, and they have the same kind of aspirations, the energy that they built up can actually create something really, really positive and be very successful in what they're doing. When there is a negative that's in that, it can actually bring the whole thing down and can collapse it, which is why, again, getting the right language and making sure everybody's on the same hymn page, if you like, to sing the right tune is very important. Because if anybody's out of key, it'll be a complete catastrophe. It would just hurt your ears, and you won't enjoy what's going on. So again, we're using lots of different metaphors there and lots of different sort of analogies of what the storytelling process actually is. And that becomes important because at the end of the day, we're all trying to tell stories, regardless of what we're doing, whether it is a filmmaker or an accountant trying to tell an investor how best to use the money in a film project. There's a story that they want to hear, that they want to know what the outcome is. And usually they want to have a minimum risk, even though film's about conflict quite often. The outcome needs to be a good outcome for them to feel secure that what they've done with their time and effort and money, in this case, has been worthwhile and has been valid, and that it wasn't just a waste of time for any of us. Garvin talked about, his time being precious and he doesn't want it wasted. And that's the key thing. None of us want our time wasted. We don't want to be doing something just because we have to. We want to be doing something because it's meaningful to us at this particular point in time, so that we can, we only have a short period of time left, I think, in life, and we want to make sure we get the most out of it. That's a critical point that we've got to make sure. So understanding the right language makes things work more efficiently, especially when they are doing the production roles, or they're doing the accountancy roles, or even in my case, doing the editing roles. It's quite important, language.
I was in the garden yesterday with my young daughter to try and cut off, or I should say, do the little bit of exercise and the mindfulness at the same time as the tick list of have to do the garden, clear the leaves, or someone's going to kill themselves slipping on it because it was sub-zero temperatures a previous couple of days. And while out there, and the great thing was I went out first of all, no one was going to help me, and then my daughter Ava came out and played with the dogs, and we have a couple of kittens, and for the few hours I was out there, the dogs and the kittens and my daughter were all playing in the garden as long as I kept on sweeping the leaves. Now, wheelbarrow loads of leaves in. You've never seen anything like it. 3 hours in, and I'm nearly half dead with my back because I'm an old man. I've gone from doing nothing to 60 wheelbarrows of leaves. Now, leaves aren't very heavy, but it's a distance from where you're going to wheelbarrow to and from, back and forward, and it's the picking up and bending down I call it exercise, but that was too much of that type of exercise, having not done it in a long time before. It was great to be doing something with the family, even though I was doing all the work and they were doing all the play. But at the same time, I was double jobbing. I was actually, for the 2 hours or 3 hours in question, I listened to 4 to 6 episodes of our own podcast, which was total narcissism on steroids. But I loved it.
Burnout.
I was listening to that's probably where I got the worry. I was listening to what we need, because the shows in question, we're talking about where we are and what we're about to do next. And I was starting to visualize the workloads. I was listening to it in the sense of, like, this feedback loop. Are we right? Does that sound well if you were a customer? Does that sound well if that was the industry? And it did. It did to me, and it reaffirmed, I am happy where we are. We need to keep on this path, and we need to do this packaging next, which is exactly where we are to plan. I listened to the show and said, I think that sounds professional. It's not for everybody. It would be for a film industry or film education audience, because now it has a certain language wrapped into it in terms of startup coaching and mentoring that has a couple of little film innuendos or references thrown in. So I started to hear this would be a good film podcast or for this particular community. So yes, I do feel happy with that product we've created. We need to keep on doing that on a regular basis. That was great. I was out there being mindful at the same time as picking up the leaves and having some family time with my daughter and the kittens and the dogs. And there was a time and place for everything. I didn't call that business work, but there was an element of it there that was wrapped up, that presented itself, that you are doing the right thing. Keep on going, keep on doing. It sounds a lot more professional than it did 9 months ago. We were talking about finding our voice. There I am listening to my own voice, talking as a professional, as a producer or financier or trainer in the film industry in this country. Does that sound like a professional in that subject heading? It did. George was talking, I was talking. We seemed to be quite knowledgeable on what we were talking about. There was a nice pace to it, and that gave me an affirmation that I'm very happy on my journey to date, and I think I sound professional on my subject, listening to myself on this show with good sound and a good pace to conversation. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.